Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here as usual, Phil on the other side of the desk over there, and we are back for a new episode today. And we're kind of covering something that's hypothetical, but kind of realistic and not hypothetical as well, which is what happens if Google abandons traditional search as we know it? What happens if the blue links go tomorrow? What would we do? What would change? What would happen? What would marketing look like? All of those things. That's what we're going to cover today. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting way just to frame our thinking about marketing now, even though we know that's not going to happen tomorrow, right? But we need to actually start thinking in this way. So yeah,
it's a useful thought exercise to put yourself ahead of others that are relying on the fact that so far nothing search hasn't gone away. People might be aware that change is happening and results are moving to different locations. But this is a really good way to think, okay, in an extreme situation, how would we react? How would we respond? And while it is hypothetical, I don't think it's unfeasible. I don't think it's an impossibility at all. We've got to be ready for anything.
Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Think about listening to this podcast right now. You're probably multitasking and catching 70, maybe 80% of it. Now flip that and imagine only catching 20%. That'd be pretty crazy, right? Yet most businesses only use 20% of their data. All the important details in call logs, emails, and chats just left floating in digital space. HubSpot gives you access to those insights to help your business grow. Because when you know more, you grow more. Visit HubSpot.com to get the full picture today. I think what's really interesting here is that businesses that have already started to recognize that the traditional search landscape and, search marketing has been starting to decline for some years now, and businesses that have recognized that and pivoted into other channels in other areas are actually starting to see the compounding effect of that already.
So absolutely,
even before AI, like the rise of AI.
Yeah, the trend of buyer attention drifting away from search at the earlier stages of the buying process have been around for quite some time, meaning the value of search has become increasingly commercial over time. Now, the way to tap into that value has actually remained largely the same from a search content SEO perspective, but nonetheless, the impact and the role of it in go-to-market and demand creation has changed already. So this would be an extreme acceleration of that, but not a net new shift.
Yeah, and as I said at the start, this is hypothetical, of course, but AI mode is in Google already. Phil, you said you had a pop-up literally yesterday saying go ahead and use AI mode.
Yeah, encouraging me to just ditch my search query and search results and go favor AI mode. Yeah.
So I'm pretty confident. I don't know when it's going to happen, but in the nearish future, search is going to look very different, and AI mode will be the default browsing experience.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because Google is the only company that can usher in that new era, right? We've got ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. People are using them in their numbers. It's phenomenal. But Google, if they replace search with AI mode, which appears to be a trajectory they're on, it's kind of the final nail in that coffin, almost, which is predominantly users, buyers, our buyers, the people we care about are going to be using one of those tools to perform their information gathering and, figuring out what they want to do and what they want to buy and how they want to buy it. And search is gone.
Yeah.
So interesting to think about it.
Yeah. So how do you think that's going to be changing the way that ultimately we think about marketing, we think about channels? Because that really removes the need for traditional SEO.
Absolutely.
As we've thought about.
Yeah. I mean, if you take it back to investments, whatever part of your budget was being spent focused on creating an impact within traditional search results and search traffic has to be reevaluated.
Yeah.
You have to reevaluate it in terms of what are you hoping to get when you do what you do, and is that still a sensible, worthwhile endeavor? not. It's not. That's the answer. But you should always consider and review these. And in that case, what can you do instead that is a sensible investment of that budget, or where can you put that money instead to offset the the loss that you're going to experience in terms of traffic? Yeah, it requires a fundamental rethink of that part of your go-to-market and potentially that part of your budget.
Yeah, and content creation, really.
Which is what most people would have been doing with that money, right? You've got content creation and I suppose some search engine marketing, right? Some Google PPC ads in a traditional sense. But when we think about SEO, when we think about search results, the play that most people were performing to get results there was written content creation.
Yeah.
And that is significantly undermined by any kind of shift further in this direction. So yeah, content creation has to change.
Yeah, and it already is changing for a lot of businesses. But like just the way that we used to create informational content, there was a reason for blogging, like not only to educate people about a particular topic, but also to combine with the other pages on your website, particularly product pages, those commercial pages, your homepage, to help that entire kind of cluster of things.
Yes.
When we think about AI, not only, taking most of the traffic away from those informational queries because it's serving that information up front, we also haven't seen yet the requirement to build topical authority.
Yeah.
That Google needs, and it's in your own advantage to create that in order to build up that holistic kind of authority and evidence to really rank better for a cluster of pages.
Yeah. I mean, not everybody saw the connection between informational content creation and commercial position improvement, but many benefited from it, even if it wasn't the thing they were going after. And truly, that's what created results for B2B companies, being found high amongst commercial queries as a result of the work that you were doing to create domain authority, high relevance, high authority. We've seen that AI cares very little for that top 3 position that you had or striving for in search results, and it will go significantly deeper to get the most closely aligned result.
Yeah.
So you haven't got to influence your position in the same way, meaning you haven't got to create the same type of content or the same quantity of content to achieve that outcome. Furthermore, every piece of informational content that was created in the search era had the opportunity, had the potential to create some brand recognition, brand awareness, and some visits to your website. And the AI experience totally strips that away. Informational queries are answered comprehensively with information from many sources. And in the majority of cases, brands get very little visibility or traffic from it. So there's not much benefit to being part of that mechanism. Right? Let others do that. Let other content, other brands inform people in a way that benefits no one other than the user, and focus your energy somewhere else.
Yeah, unless large language models like ChatGPT start to roll out trust signals or use Google's API in order to feed those into it, which is entirely possible, there really is not much point in creating informational content to be served in AI. Because I think that's such a good point about the disconnect between the information and the brand.
Yes.
Like, even if you're cited as a source for that informational content, it's such a tiny citation that most users are not paying attention to that. Like, the large language models have gotten to a point now where they're so trustworthy without the citations. In most cases, there will be use cases where you need to know what's citing that information, but most of the time now you don't need to see that. So
yeah, and I think this is sort of omitted a little bit from the advice, even from the experts that I trust. This point isn't always made clear, but if you look closely at the recommendations and the examples, there is a general correlation around commercial content. You create content to be found in the commercial type of query in an AI engine where the citations are greater, the mentions and the brand visibility is greater because AI is talking about companies and solutions specifically, and the likelihood that you can convert that into a visit somehow. Now, HubSpot have helpfully introduced LLM or AI as a original source channel, because some people will click links, and that probably will increase inside their chat experience. But right now, the majority of people are still going to search, I think, to perform branded search to get to the brands and the vendors that the AI tool recommends as a result of that commercial query and the content within it.
Yeah. The thing about commercial SEO and commercial intent, though, is that that's always been where the value is in SEO. And the difference, I think, is that when it comes to SEO commercial content, you only had to have, 3-5 pages on your website which covered that topic, because the engine was clever enough to serve that content for, shorter tail keywords that didn't include the level of context that you now have with AI prompts. The difference is now you need all of that time, all of that resource that you were putting into informational content to actually compete at the same level with AI prompts, because there's so much more variety and context being given. If you want your brand to be served and cited in that, you need to be creating content, commercial level content at scale in order to meet that.
That is definitely where the thinking and the advice and the evidence is headed. Somebody I heard or saw, can't recall now, said the other day that the volume on an AI query is 1. Meaning that whereas Google obviously had a long tail, we were still able to group together themes and topics and be visible in multiple. But there's so much scope for context and threading and memory and nuance within conversations, as per the data that you talked about on the recent episode of Demand Decoded. That the search volume on an AI query is truly 1. So in order to be featured, significantly within the result, you've got to be highly specific, which calls for scale.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So if Google was to turn off organic search tomorrow, I kind of want to get into like the nitty gritty of this now, because we're not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but it's likely to happen at some point, that search as we know it is going to change and be AI mode as the default.
Yep.
What on earth do we do as marketers? Where do we go?
Okay. All right. Well, I have my thoughts.
I have my thoughts. And I think we have good thoughts together.
So let's see if we're aligned. 1, you've got a number of options. 1, double down on, reinvest in, perfect, and become brilliant at creating brand awareness is too weak a word. It's mental availability, preference and trust amongst your ICP for your brand before search/AI takes place, by creating content in the formats that's necessary and required to be seen and discovered and consumed in channels other than AI and search, i.e. social, i.e. video and YouTube, i.e. events, communities, etc., informed and influenced by your audience and what you know about them, but be the brand that they know before they move in market for the category, so that you're top of the shortlist, because we know that the brand that's top of the shortlist, when the desire to purchase arises, has an outsized probability of winning that deal. So that is a key play for brands now. Already was, but is becoming even more powerful, I think, given the change in search.
Most businesses don't realize just how much their website is holding them back. VDOT were generating strong demand, but their site just wasn't converting it. We rebuilt their site with their buyers in mind, sharpened the user experience and aligned it to their goals. And within 90 days after launch, high intent conversions increased by 100% and demo requests rose by 14%. That's what happens when your website finally works as hard as your marketing. If you think your website might be holding you back, let's start the conversation at blendb2b.com. If you're enjoying this show, let me recommend another one from the HubSpot podcast network that I personally never miss. Nudge, hosted by Phil Agnew. What I love about Nudge is that it's all about the psychology and science behind human behavior. What makes us take action, form habits, or say yes. And then it shows how those same principles shape great marketing and sales. In one episode, Phil looks at how just 3 words in a text message boosted vaccination rates and may have saved hundreds of lives. That's the endowment effect at work, a tiny psychological nudge creating a huge outcome. Every episode of Nudge is about 20 minutes, fast paced, no fluff, and packed with ideas you can actually use. Check it out. Nudge is available wherever you get your podcast. Brand is obviously has always been important, but I think now there is so much more emphasis on being shortlisted in that initial vendor selection process because it gives you such an advantage. That's always been true, but it's never been harder to be part of that list because of the way that, search is evolving and buyers are ultimately using different channels in order to actually get that vendor list. One thing I always think about when diversifying channels and ultimately going in new areas, because what we're talking about here really is anything outside of SEO. Because if we're saying Google is going to turn organic search off tomorrow, it's like, oh God, what do we do then? The way that I've always thought about this is starting with the fundamental understanding of your audience. Where do they go to consume information?
Yep.
Like, who do they trust in the market? What messages resonate with them? What events do they go to? All of these kind of things, like building up that comprehensive profile of your audience, of your customer, of your buyers, understanding them deeply, and just going to the places that work for them. For most B2B businesses now, that's going to be LinkedIn, like as the number one place to start, followed closely, I would say, by YouTube.
Yep.
The thing I love about like video content, and I'm bullish YouTube, have been since maybe mid last year when I've really started to, notice this shift in and the disconnect between brand and informational content. YouTube gives you the connection between the information you're delivering and your brand and your people in ways that written content never could anyway. Like the power of it is truly incredible, and it still enables you to educate your audience. Like if we're saying that AI is ultimately taking, most of the blog content, the informational blog content, well, YouTube's still there. Like millions of people are still using YouTube. We get thousands of views on like HubSpot related videos, which is, it shows, I mean, that's a niche, like that's a really tight niche. And like people are still really enjoying the content. They're commenting saying that it's, fantastic content and you're becoming a trusted source of information for them. And that's a great way to work your way up the ladder on that vendor selection list when the buying trigger occurs.
Absolutely. And, like LinkedIn, like SEO was, YouTube is to some degree, a performance channel. You can understand it.
Yeah.
You can iterate on your approach. You can optimize your results, and you can measure. So it's important to treat it as such. And there's a big opportunity there. Not, even before you get to the concept and the realization that creating content in video format first gives you maximum repurposability on it. So no matter what your audience requires and desires, creating content in video format first gives you the ability to transform it into other assets, other content types, so much easier than beginning with the written word. It's really, 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 really the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, like 3-5 years ago when this kind of like content playbook of video first was really taken off, was great then. Now it's essential.
Yeah.
Like it's never been more important to go with that approach first because of the channels it allows you to unlock.
Yeah.
And the different mediums.
And also, as lots of businesses will be wanting to do, if you want to use AI effectively and efficiently within your organization, then that type of content is the absolute best content format you can produce in order to drive your AI workflows. Nothing else comes close. Nothing else cuts it. It's the way to optimize for AI within your business as well as within the buying process. So that's really worthwhile considering, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Phil, do you have anything you can, give as a kind of playbook, as a thought process, the way to think about actually aligning content creation now to that more commercial side of things that will help visibility?
Yeah, I think we can. So having observed what buyers are doing, how people are using AI, some of the experiments we've performed here that you've run, and also the work of HubSpot, right, with their new Loop growth playbook, we're starting to see some strategies that are getting some consensus and showing some results, which is to ultimately create the content that AI uses to describe your service category solution for the buyer that's using the tool, which means producing content that is easily retrievable by AI. Recall that AI retrieves passages of content, not whole pages. So really well structured content that has complete thoughts communicated in one passage, as opposed to a sort of fragmented narrative approach, which for me was good blog strategy. But a variety of approaches worked. Now more than ever, it's important to really structure your content for this passage-based retrieval system, and think about the content that AI needs in order to answer the user's query. So one of the early plays that we're seeing have some merit is users ask AI to tell them who are the best software companies for this part of their business, their problem, their challenge, their enterprise, or who are the best service vendors within a category, or who are the best, providers of XYZ. And they're enriching that content with information about their company. So content that's aligned. So that could be a list of the best types of provider, including yourself, for a need, can be very effective at becoming the source that AI uses. So thinking about the queries that your buyers are likely to use in an AI engine, and then creating the content, publishing that content on your website so that it can be crawled and pulled and served to them, appears to be a way to move the needle now on how often you're cited, how clearly, and how prominently. If your piece of content is the source for one of these queries, you can position yourself very well, very highly in that set of results. Now, AI is probabilistic, right? Nearly every result is different in some degree. You can't guarantee that by creating an article saying who are the 10 best project management systems for, construction businesses working in civil engineering in North America or in a particular state, you can't guarantee that by creating one article for that, you'll always be in first position, but you can positively impact the likelihood that you'll be there, and do that over and over and over again. And you can increase and change the number of mentions, number of citations that you're getting for those commercial queries, which can produce brand awareness, mental availability, and traffic to your website that you can then convert, and will probably convert at a higher rate given the level of education, the level of qualification that visitor represents, having seen that information. Big challenge for people is monitoring that, measuring that. There's a whole new category of tools coming out. And at best, I think these tools can give you directional data only because of the massive quantity of unique searches that are going to take place, or unique queries that are going to take place in AI. But most businesses are going to want to start to think about an AI monitoring tool of some sort to see whether this is impacting them, the way they want.
Yeah, there was a lot to unpack in that, which is awesome. The thing I would say, just whilst it's fresh, is the tool thing, right? A lot of these tools are great. Demoed a few now, tried a few, and they do the job. They are very, very expensive.
Yeah. I think that's fundamentally down to the costs of operating them, because
exactly that.
They're basically doing what you do, which is querying an AI engine over and over and over again to produce a sort of statistical, data point on how often your brand appears. That's not very efficient.
So for most mid-market B2B companies, I think you'll struggle to get the cost of one of these tools signed off, for your use. Really, because if you have SEMrush right now, or Ahrefs, for example, which a lot of B2B companies do themselves, I mean, you're talking 10x the cost.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's insane, really. Maybe less for just one brand, but it will be significantly more, no doubt. I do question the long-term effectiveness of some of these like AI content plays, because, and you know, we were chatting about this before, right? I just think the job of a search engine is to provide the user with the best experience possible.
Yeah.
And that's why Google have rolled out so many algorithm changes over the years and changed the UI of their interface and things like that, because ultimately they want to serve their users with the best information possible, and a lot of ads, of course, to make revenue.
Yeah.
Chat GPT and other large language models right now, if they can be easily gamed and manipulated to, you know, serve vendors at the top of a list, even when they might not be trusted to actually be the best vendor for that purpose, then I think at some point in time they're going to have to iterate their model to be more trust-based.
I mean, who knows, right? We just don't know.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see what happens. I think I take confidence from the fact that businesses have to do what works now.
I agree with that.
You know,
yeah.
we can't
Pull on the
not
leaf
do
works
that
now.
while we wait for something else to happen. An event run by Winter earlier this week, the updates and announcements we heard from HubSpot about Loop and speaking to Asia, who'll be on the podcast soon, you know, give me confidence that there's a general expectation that this will last for some length of time. Most things in B2B marketing last. Now, the rate of change is accelerating, so I think you are right to nobody should count on this and bank on this exclusively and forever, because that the rug could get pulled like it did with, you know, backlinking, you know, and authority back in the day with Google. So be diversified, be ready, but this is showing promise right now, and I think it's the opportunity people can capitalize on if they're able to do it effectively and efficiently. If you take forever to get to it, then the window of opportunity might close. For sure.
There are always short-term opportunities that could, you know, push into long-term opportunities that you should pull on anyway, regardless.
You know, again, if you come at this from the sort of idea that you're going to, you've got a number of objectives, right? Create brand mental availability preference, produce content that is found and cited in AI, SEO, AEO, and also convert visitors into, you know, you've got this broad array of requirements as a business to create pipeline. You know, if you come at content creation from the, you know, top down, video first, you can create these types of content for these different channels relatively efficiently. And you can be working in multiple channels simultaneously at that level of efficiency. So even if there's change here in what works and to what degree it works, you can sort of be hedging. You know, you can be taking care of other parts of your go-to-market at the same time. And hopefully, you know, offset any risk.
The reason, you know, why I kind of bring that up is because I think there's always a risk in marketing of hedging all of your bets in one particular channel, one particular area. People that have built a business based on effectiveness of SEO are going to start to feel the pain of that. And there is always a risk in putting too much value in a channel that you don't own, because you're at risk of algorithm changes, at buyer behavior changes, at like even LinkedIn, for example. If you've built up a profile of 200,000 followers and it's bringing you, you know, amazing business consistently, if Google just changed their algorithm that negatively affects your visibility, like, well, you're screwed.
And so, people have, you know, had shocks in that regard in the past. Absolutely.
So it's always worth diversifying this, no matter what. Like, of course, if Google turn off organic search tomorrow, the marketers, the businesses that win are the ones that have already diversified.
To that point, it's a good, like, we're doing a mental exercise now around Google search. Right? What if Google search goes away? It's quite useful to do that on anything that's kind of critical to your go-to-market, right? If this just collapses completely, what would we rely on? What would we do? That, combined with up-to-date audience insights, you know, and self-reflection to some degree, can keep you, you know, ahead of some of the potential like disruptions. But I think that's useful. Like you say, and and SEO is one of those. businesses have counted on it for so
Yeah.
long and to such a degree that for some it will represent the totality of their, you know, of their demand acquisition.
Yeah.
You know, that's really risky.
Yeah.
And others will have done the same with email marketing and with social to some degree, or Google shopping ads, or there's a whole range of channels that if it's the only meaningful contributor to your results, that's a risky position to be in.
Yeah.
And it's time to reevaluate.
Absolutely. One thing that I do want to touch on, because I want to try and touch on this as much as we can now on this podcast, is CRO.
Yeah.
And actually, I love that it's a fundamental part of the loop now. How HubSpot have really framed conversion rate optimization as such a key part of their new playbook.
Yeah.
Because sure, traffic is going down on most websites, not all, but most websites. Google is generating less clicks to websites.
Yep.
I'm sure it is around like 58% of Google searches aren't being clicked.
A zero click.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Heard that on Marketing Against the Grain.
Yeah.
And one of the best things you can do right now is optimize your website to convert that traffic in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And the traffic that you do get now will be more qualified, like better informed buyers who can make decisions.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're like businesses are getting traffic to their website that represents a whole mix of people, right? Many of whom are not interested, not in market, and not really that attractive to us.
Yeah.
And we're kind of optimizing, or should be optimizing, for the portion of that traffic that is our buyer.
Yeah.
In the future, that's going to be the only portion of traffic that you receive, which is a huge positive in some respects, because it means that you know who you're talking to, and you know what you're trying to do, and you're not sifting out data from all sorts of other visitors. But the number's going to go be significantly lower, meaning the relative value, the relative potential of each one is much higher. They're going to be more educated, they're going to be more qualified, so it's critical that you are doing everything you can, everything within your power, to help them act on their interest, take the next step, want to talk to you, and become an opportunity. The way I think about this is the fact that inbound is still incredibly important. Inbound still works. The act of doing things so that buyers find you, come to you, engage with you, and buy from you is still very, very, very important, effective, and powerful.
Yeah.
But the way that you bring people inbound is changing, and has changed significantly since inbound was created, 2010, I suppose, by HubSpot. We've been deviating away from that original playbook ever since. So loop marketing, the AI era is ushering in a big rethink of how inbound programs need to be structured, but they are still an incredibly effective way to create pipeline, as long as you move with the times, you move with your buyer, you move with the technology, and you don't either over rely on a single channel or act in a way that's oblivious to the data that's showing you how this behavior is changing. Move with the times, move with the data, and you can continue to grow through inbound very, very effectively.
Yeah. I just think there might be some tactical things in this episode that you could take. The real thing is, like, this is just a great thought exercise to be doing right now, because if you start acting like Google has stopped providing organic search altogether, it forces you to think about different things. And like, there is a extremely strong chance that this is going to be a reality at some point in our future. And if you can start thinking about how to build your brand, how to drive demand in other ways outside of search, it's just a really good, reflection thing, and a good strategic exercise to actually do right now.
Yeah, puts you, ahead of competitors, puts you in a position to win, and protects you from anything sudden that does change.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Cool. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about the role of content in a couple of episodes' time, because there's a lot of questions right now around, if we're not creating this blog content, what kind of content do we create? And we've touched on that in different things, but I really want to unpack that playbook for people.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's wrap it up there.
Yep.
And hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. That was an interesting one. Like, I love talking about, different hypothesis and, what the future could look like. And in some ways it's a scary reality. But yeah, all good nonetheless.
One that has to be embraced.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's wrap it up there. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and we will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.
This episode of Demand Decoded was brought to you by Blend. We help B2B technology companies grow through strategic, creative, and technical expertise, bringing you the capabilities you need to drive demand and turn it into real revenue impact for your business. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Demand Decoded on your favorite podcast platform, leave us a quick review, and we'll see you next time with more insight to help you grow.